On behalf of the David Lynch Foundation and all well-wishers of humanity, it is a great privilege for me to stand here this afternoon and open a forum on women, violence, and meditation. And my name is Bob Roth, and I'm the Executive Director of the David Lynch Foundation, and I am joined here by a great team of David Lynch Foundation staff and members, which we'll introduce as a group later. But I just wanted to just say what I think everyone knows. It's a national crime. It's a national shame. It's a national horror, what's happening to women and girls in this country and around the world. This is not a forum just outlining the horrors. This is a forum to present a very real, practical, and proven approach to helping women and girls heal traumatic stress and empower them for success and fulfillment in life. Soledad O'Brien was going to be a co-host along with the wonderful Rita Cosby, who I'll introduce in a moment. Soledad is in Florida right now, as we mentioned to some of you, covering the Trayvon Martin controversy. She made a wonderful video for us to open, and then we'll continue and progress with the forum. So if we could watch this video.
Hi, I'm Soledad O'Brien, and I was supposed to be with you today at the Intrepid Sea, Air, and Space Museum. Unfortunately, I've been called away, but by this miracle of technology, I can send you this message remotely. I'm really sorry to not be a part of the Women, Violence, and Meditation Forum because issues about women and advocating for women is really important to me. The numbers of women and girls who are abused and traumatized at home, on the streets, and in the line of duty in the military serving our country is staggering. It's unconscionable. And I want to take a moment to just share some statistics with you. 19,000 female veterans have been victims of military sexual abuse in just the past year. Over 100,000 girls and teenagers under the age of 17 are said to be victims of prostitution in America alone. And the number of women and girls who are raped and tortured and killed in war-torn areas around the globe is literally beyond estimation and beyond comprehension. I applaud all the good works of all the private organizations and governmental agencies that are dedicated to addressing the plight of these women and these girls who suffer such unimaginable wrongs. At the same time, I'm speaking today in support of the good works of the David Lynch Foundation because it provides something that's missing in the lives of women and girls, a tool to help them in their own terms overcome and heal those terrible traumas and abuse that can grip their lives. And that tool is meditation. I learned transcendental meditation several months ago at the recommendation of my friend Russell Simmons, and of course I really didn't think I could do it. I mean, if you knew me, you'd know I cannot meditate. I have a crazy schedule. I have 4 small children. I am always going. So the idea of calming my mind, I thought, not possible, but I was able to learn it. I was able to do it, and I appreciate very much the opportunity to take the time and focus and meditate, and it allows me to experience a state of deep rest and relaxation that can be game-changing and sometimes a lifesaver in a crazy world. It helps alleviate stress and pressure if you're trying to balance life as a wife and a mother and as a journalist, and I think I feel healthier and have fewer stressful days and more energy and more clarity of mind. So that's all my own personal experience, and that's literally why I'm speaking in support of transcendental meditation for abused women and girls. It's not just my own experience, though, that drives my support. The other reason, and really a much more substantive reason, frankly, is because there's lots of evidence to show that meditation actually works. And you're going to hear from doctors today that there's lots of science to back up the claim that transcendental meditation is an effective tool in the prevention and the treatment of post-traumatic stress disorder and stress-related disorders like anxiety and depression, eating disorders, cardiovascular disease, even insomnia. So I'm envious of everybody who's there today. I wish I could be with you because I'd love to listen in on the panelists and watch the amazing stories of transformation, especially in the lives of women and girls. And certainly the next time my schedule permits, I'd love to be with you at your next event, which I hope is soon. But without any further comments from my side, because I know there's lots to get to today, I'll just say that it is my honor honor to welcome you to this public forum on women and violence and meditation on the beautiful Intrepid Sea, Air, and Space Museum, hosted by the David Lynch Foundation's Women's Initiative. And I hope that you're inspired by what you hear and that you're motivated to work with the foundation to bring meditation to every woman and every girl who needs it. Thank you very much and have a great time.
Just by way of a quick definition, since we're going to be referring to this meditation, transcendental meditation, for the next hour or so. Transcendental meditation, for those of you who don't know. First of all, let me ask, anybody here tried to meditate at one time or another? At the end of a year? Yeah. Okay. And who has never even considered that thought? So I'm going to now define what this transcendental meditation is that we're talking about. In brief, so when you hear references to it, we're talking about a simple technique that anyone can practice, even if you think you could never do it because your mind is so busy. Anybody think their mind is too busy to meditate? Yeah, it can happen. Absolutely simple, natural, and effortless technique that's practiced about 20 minutes twice a day, once in the morning, once in the afternoon, just sitting comfortably in a chair, pretty much anywhere, in a plane, in a train, in a car, if someone else is driving, it helps. And during that 20-minute period, your mind effortlessly experiences a state of inner calm and inner peace that's always been there. At the same time as we'll hear, the body gains a profound state of rest and relaxation, and that deep rest eliminates the buildup of stress and tension and fatigue and foundationally heals trauma in a way that nothing else does. It's not a religion, there's no religious beliefs, it's not a philosophy, nothing you have to buy into. You can be a really skeptical person and meditate and it's just fine. What we're going to look at today is how it's being used through the David Lynch Foundation Women's Initiative, and this is the inaugural session to the David Lynch Foundation's Women's Initiative, how it's being used to heal and empower women and girls. And our first panelist, we are very, very grateful and fortunate to have, because she goes off to where? India. Goes to India this afternoon? Yeah, going to India this afternoon. I hope there's no traffic on the way to the JFK. Pamela Schiffman is the Director of Initiatives for Girls and Women at the Novo Foundation, where she directs the foundation's work on empowering adolescent girls and ending violence against girls and women. Pamela's prior work includes spearheading UNICEF's efforts to end gender-based violence in conflict-affected settings, addressing the trafficking of girls and women, and she did this as the co-executive director of Equality Now, and she serves as a legal advisor for the ANC Parliamentary Women's Caucus in South Africa. Please welcome Pamela Schiffman.
Should be good. Yeah, great. Good afternoon, everyone. Yeah. So thank you so much for this opportunity to be here today. Thank you to the David Lynch Foundation. I'm so excited to be on this panel of really incredible women, and I am looking forward to the discussion and to learning a lot from all of you today. I'm one of the people who knows more about the women and the violence section of the three words in the title than the meditation section, so I will be learning a lot from many of you I know as well. So today, I want to share a little bit with you about why the Novo Foundation believes that ending violence against girls and women is critical to enacting the kind of broad-scale social change we believe that the world needs. So I'm going to just start, though, by sharing a quote from a 16-year-old girl in India who I think actually sums up the need best. She says, "People feel that a girl is meant to be used either as a doormat, a maid, a birth-giving machine, or as a source of physical pleasure. Something concrete seriously needs to be done to change the current scenario, because now a girl does not feel safe even in her own house, let alone in the streets." So at the Novo Foundation, we seek a transformation in global society from a culture of domination and exploitation to partnership and collaboration, empowering girls and women as the primary agents of change. When Jennifer and Peter Buffett, the co-chairs of the Novo Foundation, started the foundation in its current incarnation in 2006, they spent a long time interviewing lots of people to try to figure out where is it that this foundation should focus on? Where would they be able to have the biggest impact? And they met literally with hundreds of people, and they really went deep, and they read a lot, and they just really did a lot of personal work to figure this question out. And they realized that they cared about everything. They cared about health, they cared about water, they cared about the environment, they cared about all these issues. But what they realized is that the degradation of girls and women and the horrific levels of violence that were happening to girls and women were core to every single other issue that they cared about. And what they also realized as they were on this search to figure out where to focus, that there were very few resources that were being dedicated to promoting the empowerment of girls and women. We know that less than half a cent of every development dollar that goes into international development goes directly to an adolescent girl, less than 1/2 of every cent spent. So we know that that is the case. At the same time, we know that adolescent girls are the most vulnerable. They need those resources more than anyone else. And we also know that when an adolescent girl gets resources, she changes her own life, the life of her community, her family, her country. So we know what a good investment that is, and yet it just was not happening. So Soledad, in her amazing introductory video, shared some statistics and information about violence against girls and women and the state that we are living in. I just want to add a few points to that. So we know that 1 out of every 3 girls and women globally, 1 out of every 3 will be beaten, raped, or otherwise abused in her lifetime. We also know that every year there are 10 million girls who are married as children, 10 million girls who are married before the age of 18. And these girls are often relegated to lives of domestic chores all day, no education, domestic violence at the hands of their much older husbands, and sexual abuse at the hands of those same husbands. In addition, we know that in India, where I'm about to go later on, we know that up to 3 million women and children are trapped in the sex trade in India, and that right here at home in New York City, more than 2,000 children, mainly girls, are being prostituted on the streets, right here in New York City. So these numbers are chilling, but what they don't tell us is what is the impact on girls and women, and why is it so critical that we end it? So I want to share 3 very brief reasons about why we think that we need to end this problem. The first reason is that the threat of violence impacts how girls and women live their lives every day. It literally impacts our every movement. Many girls around the world identify the fact that their teachers ask for sex in exchange for grades as a major barrier to their school attendance. So in one study, 50% of girls in Malawi said that either their teachers or schoolboys were sexually harassing them or sexually assaulting them at school. Here in the United States, the amazing organization Girls for Gender Equity published a book called Hey Shorty, which documented widespread sexual harassment among girls in New York City schools and on the streets. So what impact does this violence have on these girls? I will share the results of one study in Zambia, which I think says it all. When girls in this study in Zambia were asked what strategies they used to protect themselves from violence, 86% of girls surveyed said that their strategy to protect themselves from violence was to, quote, stay home. Girls withdrawing from opportunities, girls playing it safe by limiting their options, crossing out whole parts of their environment, markets, industries, jobs, entitlements, health clinics, education, all arise because of their fears for their physical safety, so that the mere threat of violence actually impacts their potential. The second critical reason we must end violence against girls and women is that while all violence by anyone against anyone is devastating, The thing that's often different about gender-based violence that makes it, I would say, uniquely horrific is that so often the violence is minimized, it's normalized, it's defended, it's called everything but violence. So let me share an example. I just came back from Liberia a week ago, and while there was a woman who described a situation of domestic violence with her boyfriend, and her boyfriend had actually cut off 2 of her fingers. And she had gone to the police to get help and to get redress. And the police sent her home and said, "That's girlfriend-boyfriend business. That's not for us. That's for you to take care of. That's your business. That's personal business." Instead of recognizing what happened to her as violence, it was ignored and it was minimized, and she was told that it was her problem. Similarly, millions of women around the world, including in the United States, are forced to trade sex for their survival and are told and are treated also by the law as though it is their fault and they are criminals, not victims of an inequitable system in which for many girls and women, their only asset is their body. There are so many more examples. We only need to remember the origin of slut walks only a few months ago to know that violence against women continues to be defended and normalized right here in the United States and in North America generally. The impact on every girl or woman when violence against us is seen as normal or seen as our fault or seen as not really violence at all is truly heartbreaking. And the third and final reason why ending violence against women and girls is so important and why we must work to create a world where girls and women are safe is because when girls and women are safe and are able to thrive and not merely survive, we can turn ourselves to the tasks of creating a more just, more fair, and more loving world that we would all like to be a part of. Before I end, I just want to return to the 16-year-old girl who I started with and remember what she said when she said that something concrete seriously needs to be done to change the current scenario, and to say that I'm really looking forward to hearing from my fellow panelists and all of you about what can be done to change this current scenario. Thank you. And now I have the distinct honor to introduce the next speaker, Tara Jones-Wise, who's the executive director of the newly formed Women Veterans Association of America, an organization that strives to provide innovative employment services, one-to-one counseling and advocacy for increased benefits for women veterans. The descendant of a long line of military active duty service members, Tara is the first woman in her family to serve in the U.S. military. She's a 90% service-connected disabled veteran of the Gulf War era and an MBA graduate under the Vocational Rehabilitation Program. Before we hear from Tara, I want you to watch this.
My entire family is military. My dad served in the U.S. Navy. All the men in my family on my mother's side served in the military forever. And I'm the first female in my family to serve in the U.S. military. I'll be honest with you, I don't share my story a lot. I am a victim of MST, military sexual trauma. Military sexual trauma is one of the most demeaning, defacing, deplorable things that an individual can endure. It's not so much as the rape. That's not the problem. The problem is how you're defamed, defaced, told that you wanted it, or that you encouraged it, or you're a liar. The statistics are alarming. 19,000 sexual assaults last year within our active duty military. 19,000 people are not lying. There's a lot of people that do vet business and a lot of different types of organizations, but when I reached out to them, it was nothing there for women. There was nothing there for me. They treated me like I was still on active duty. They talked to me like I was still on active duty. And it just continued to bring up all of the negative things that I had experienced from then. And I wanted to die. I knew I felt worthless. Just really worthless. And I started drinking and just the behavior and staying out all night, and just kind of gave up on, housework and bills, and just give up on it. And I walked away from all of it just easily. I got on the internet and started looking for women, veterans like me and organizations like me. I was just starting one-on-one counseling through the VA. They do great when you get in there. But I still needed something in my day-to-day. And I found transcendental meditation. The very first day that I learned was so powerful for me. And it felt really good. And I was like, gosh, I need everybody to feel like I feel. Once I started meditating, my weight started coming down. I feel better. I'm a lot more healthier. I have a lot more energy. I'm able to be a lot more focused and just be happy about living. Never would I ever have thought that I would be organizing women. I wanted to make sure that women like me that suffered from suicidal ideation, that are victims of MST, that have had some traumatic experiences and had a lot of stress and don't know how to transition back from active duty, that there was something out there that actually worked. And it saves lives. And it can save lives, and it's gonna save some more lives. And we just gotta make sure everyone's aware.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm very humble. I want you all to know that. And I take advocacy and awareness very seriously. We have a crisis amongst women veterans. Women veterans matter. The David Lynch Foundation and all special guests and panelists, I'm very honored to be here with you today. There's so much going on in our society today, and there's a couple of things that I just wanted to make sure. I'm one of those type of people, whenever I'm in front of an audience, I want to make sure that I don't miss something that people need to hear. And so I just made 3 key points, and then I'll get to my overall speech. But the Trayvon Martin family, one thing I just want to make sure I say is that the David Lynch Foundation, I really encourage you to reach out to that family, because immediate healing is so important. And right now, society is not receiving immediate healing because we're in a at a standstill about what's going on. So that's important. And I know that you guys are going to do that because you're just awesome at what you're doing on that. So Bob, thank you for that. I had a veteran that committed suicide this morning. So, of course, my heart goes out to their family. I got the call about 4:30 this morning. You know, this is a reality in my community. And society needs to know. And so my job, along with whoever partners with us and works with us, is to bring about advocacy, awareness, and educate. so people can know what's going on amongst my population. Death threats, I've had a few. Just in the last 2 weeks, I've been called with death threats about speaking out about MST. People have used social media to harass me, harass my family. And I'm here to tell you today that before I came to the David Lynch Foundation, I was suicidal. I was suicidal, and I wanted to end it all. They cared. I reached out to them. They immediately reached back. They offered transcendental meditation to me, talked to me, met with me. I traveled to Washington to meet with Dr. Serena Groswald, and they helped me. And I'm here today. And I thank you guys because you were what I needed at that time. And it's a reality. It's not a joke. It's not a game. TM is not hocus pocus. It's not something to question. You know, I am a survivor of military sexual trauma, and I have tried to transition from my service for years. And I will always consider myself in a transition. You know, it's just something about being in the military and serving on active duty that you just have with you after your service. And thank you. And we, as women that serve in the military, we owe it to the public. It's not just society's problem, but it's our problem also. It's why I call it a problem is because there's a disconnect. And we owe it to be more boisterous about the challenges that we are having. Our government kind of operates a little bit backwards. They only are going to fund things or put money in areas where there's a need. Historically, women veterans haven't really spoke out to a massive level. We have had 1.8 million women to serve in the U.S. military. The state of California, which that's where I am out of, we have 166,000 women veterans that serve. Women veterans. We have the highest number of homeless women veterans in the state of California. Iraqi, Afghanistan, returning women veterans, we have the highest number of homelessness. We have the highest number of unemployment. Women veterans matter. All vets matter. But when I looked out for assistance, I did not psychologically see myself in society. I just didn't. When I tried to talk to my male counterparts, they wasn't listening to me. It was still what they wanted to hear, and it triggered me back to my active duty status. And I knew, based off of all the counseling that I had had through the Department of Veterans Affairs, that I needed to keep pushing forward, that I didn't need to live in the past of my active duty service. And so those are the things that I wanted to make sure I share. The challenges of women veterans and how TM can help. During the transitional period from active duty, the veteran population faces a variety of challenges. Unfortunately, women veterans suffer from uniquely daily life stressors as they try to adapt. According to the Department of Veterans Affairs, studies show that a high population of women veterans suffer from depression, hypertension, military sexual trauma, and post-traumatic stress disorder. A significant number of women veterans may have dual diagnosis of service-connected disabilities that can range to include anxiety disorder, traumatic brain injuries, suicide, and a lack of adequate gynecological treatment within VA medical centers. Not all VA medical centers offer women's health. There's a disconnect there. Society just believes that we can just go in a VA and we just get all these services. Not true. You know, I applaud the Obama administration because for the first time in our history, that particular administration has done a lot for the women veteran population. So I want to make sure that's clear. As a result of the lack of adequacy within our VA medical centers for women's health, veterans find themselves, women veterans, easily suffering from severe hopelessness that leads to downward spiral of criminal activity, drug usage, unemployment, housing, and lack of positive parenting. The Department of Labor Women's Bureau just did a study on women who are serving on active duty. Half of our active duty women currently serving right now are single parents. Whatever goes on with women veterans, let me be clear, whatever goes on with women veterans, it will impact our children. That is what is going to create your new future. So if no one wants to pay attention or get involved, these are going to be the things that impact our history. Women are chemically made up different than men. During boot camp, military women give up a part of their femininity for the overall acceptance into what has historically been considered a male-dominated culture. Women are nurturing, motherly, and emotionally connected to nature. We just are. We sacrifice a part of our femininity to conform to the distinct image as a soldier. After service, part of our transition is trying to find our path back to our womanhood. Going and doing daily things, that women things, to find yourself. I had a problem with doing that for a very long time. I just did. Transcendental meditation is the best possible solution. As women are chemically made up different than our male counterparts, therefore we respond differently to stress and day-to-day living. TM helped women veterans to have higher tolerance of civilian society, daily noise levels, unfavorable health issues, difficult family communication, and rediscovering their femininity. Those are just some of the things that women veterans face. I've lived them, faced them myself personally. Meditation helps relax and process and relieve your mind from all the complexities that are embedded in your brain. This is not something as military people that we pick up and put down. This is the life that we live every day, that we try to transition. And even though I was utilizing the VA Medical Center and I was receiving medications, I couldn't walk around like a zombie. I have children. I needed something to help me with my day-to-day, to help me focus, to help me be calm, to let me know that at the end of the day, regardless of what goes on, everything's going to be okay. For that, the David Lynch Foundation, Dr. Serena, Bob Roth, Austin, Reva, all you guys, make no mistake, you will assist in transforming history. You will assist in transforming the way the Department of Veterans Affairs is operating. I thank you guys for coming out today. Thank you. Please support the David Lynch Foundation and all they're doing on behalf of the veteran population and Operation Warrior Wellness. Thank you. Okay. Before I go, let me take the time to introduce Dr. Pamela Peak. She is the Pew Foundation Scholar in Nutrition and Metabolism, Assistant Professor of Medicine at the University of Maryland, and Fellow of the American College of Physicians. Dr. Peak is WebMD's Chief Lifestyle Expert and Chief Medical Correspondent for Discovery Health TV, a stress researcher. Dr. Peak's studies helped confirm the toxic stress abnormal fat connection. Dr. Pamela Peak.
It usually goes up about 3 feet. It's a great honor to be here. I want to thank Bob Roth, the David Lynch Foundation, for their extraordinary work, to say the least. Most importantly, it's a miracle because I can meditate. I'm a type AAAAA personality. I make Soledad look like she's hypothyroid. I'm the best thing that ever happened to TM, because if I can do it, anybody can do it. And that became the joke back in Washington, D.C., when my wonderful colleague, Dr. Norman Rosenthal, a fellow scientist at the National Institutes of Health, and I had gotten together about 3 years ago, and he told me he was writing a new book. And I said, gee, another one on seasonal affective disorder? And rock on, it sounds really cool. And he says, no, this is different. It's called transcendence. I said, you've lost your mind. What are you doing? And he said, well, I've this whole thing about transcendental meditation, Pam, you have to do this. And I said, really? I have to schedule breathing right now, because I was living on Virgin Airways between Washington and LA, filming for the Discovery Channel. I said, 4 days in a row, are you out I can't even see my husband 4 days in a row. And you want me to do what? Stay still? Well, I'm also an athlete, so my idea of a good time is, well, in 3 weeks I'm running the Boston Marathon, to give you a small idea of how that one's going to go. Let the prayer circle start now. Just looked at those hills again. So I thought that was where it was, until about a year and some change ago, when Norm circled back with the galley of his book. And as authors, we usually exchange quotes among each other. And he said, read the galley and give me a really juicy quote. And I said, okay, all right. And then I cursed him because I couldn't put the galley down. It was that good. Why? I'm a scientist. I'm a physician and a scientist. I've dedicated my life to good science. And this was just wall to wall, the most profound science, finally showing that there is a very strong connection between what happens in transcendental meditation specifically and a number of disorders that we all know, everything from depression to PTSD to ADD, and it just goes on and on. And so I decided to do it. And I have to tell you, first of all, I'm the first research scientist at the senior fellow level in the Office of Alternative Medicine at the NIH. That was my Jekyll and Hyde thing. By day, she was wearing her white coat and scrubs and working on regular patients. By night, she was with the Office of Alternative Medicine, And that's where I met Herb Benson of the famous relaxation response at the Harvard University Mind-Body Institute. And I am their most spectacular, most famous failure. I lasted 11 seconds. I couldn't relax to save my life. You could have given me the $500,000, for the or the $500 million for the lottery. I still couldn't make it happen. I don't know, whatever. When the student is ready, the teacher appears. So when I finished the work with Norm's book, it was very interesting. So I marched in to the people, Mario and Linda, down at the Bethesda TM Center, and I warned them ahead of time. I said, I'm coming. Now, as I sat down, I said, we have rules. Okay? If I see any candles, I'm out of here. Okay? I'm not changing religions. I kind of like mine. It's a little flawed, but, it works. Right? Okay? We're not sharing. No circles are forming. Stay away from me. And I just finished a triathlon, so I have hair on my chest. So don't mess with me. And Mario stood up and he said, Dr. Peak, we knew you were coming. We were ready for you. We have a customized form of meditation for you. We call it warrior meditation. I said, yeah, I like that. Let's sit down. Let's rock. Then I said, 20 minutes? And then a small miracle took place. It fit like a glove. And I haven't stopped, and it's been 1.5 years. And it's been fantastic. So I'm a physician and a scientist with a mouth in multimedia. And so you're going to be hearing a lot about TM at multiple levels as I begin my work, both in messaging as well as in research, because I'm going to begin a number of studies at the University of Maryland utilizing this. And here's what's interesting. I used to think, oh my God, I'm coming out of the closet. They're going to know I meditate. And so I went to my very esteemed colleagues at the NIH, one in particular who heads the National Institute of Drug Abuse, because I'm going to be doing some work with food addiction specifically. And this is obviously the addiction place. And I sat down with Dr. Nora Volkow, who is an extraordinary scientist one of the only 2 women who had the 17 institutes of the NIH, very powerful woman. And I sat down and I said, I have a very extraordinary and amazing potential solution that could be added to our armamentarium of what we want to do in addiction. In addiction, she says, really what? And she's sitting on the edge of her chair, almost falling off. And she says, what is it? What is it? And I said, it's it's meditation. She says, really? What was that again? Meditation. And I said, it's meditation. She says, that's fantastic. She says, will you write a protocol? I would love to fund that. Now I fell off the chair. I said, really? You want to fund it? She says, of course. Nothing else works. Who knew? Hey, look, you put it out there. What's the worst that can happen? They reject you. So get over it already. So I grew a set and I asked her. And it worked. So now we're going to have a study. How do you like that? It works. All right, as they say, enough about me. How about a little science? Tara said it so beautifully, incredibly moving. Charles Darwin once said that those who survive are not the strongest or the smartest. They're those who can adapt. The 2 words that you need to understand are adapt and adjust. And the human being in any warm-blooded mammal adapts and adjusts in very interesting ways, sometimes in self-destructive ways. Sometimes people think that adapting is putting something up your nose or up your veins or drinking too much or eating too much, whatever. That's maladaptation and maladjustment instead. So let's look at women for a moment. Clearly, I share everyone's fervor and passion with what this whole theme today is resonating around, which is this women and stress. Is it just stress? No, it's something I call toxic stress. And when I wrote my very first book about this subject, I think about 10 years ago or so, I actually coined that term. Toxic stress is any stress in your life associated with the 3 musketeers: helplessness, hopelessness, and defeat. When that happens, extraordinary hormonal changes happen in both a male and a female. Your sex hormones decrease. Cortisol, or stress hormone, increases precipitously, as well as adrenaline. When that does, you erode your immune system, and you're wide open for impulsivity and for implosion. Men explode, women implode. We have a different way of dealing with stress, as it were. Men like to go it alone. Men tend to become much more solitary, take it to themselves. Women tend and befriend. That's the oxytocin that flows in our blood. Men and women both have it. Women tend to have more of it because of estrogen. Estrogen tends to make it even more powerful and more potent. Men dissociate and withdraw. Women associate and seek support. And as Tara said so beautifully, honey, we need the estrogen squad. We need to be able to relate. We need to be able to say, same thing with you? No kidding. You know, as a chief lifestyle expert for WebMD, I have 90 million members. They like to relate. Look at how those exchange boards light up, especially when we go deeply into everything from men's health to women's health and back and forth. They just light up like Kyoto at nighttime. Women often course through a path of self-destruction on their way to healing. They gain weight. Tara gained weight. They abuse themselves. They overeat. Substance abuse is a big piece of the action. And that's because we're in pain and we need to numb it. And you'll find anything you can that works with you to numb it, and you do. But numbing's not the answer. As the toxic stress heightens, something's going on in the brain. The prefrontal cortex is in charge of executive function. It helps you plan, strategize, organize. It helps you rein in the 3 I's: impatience, irritability, impulsivity. It allows you to be able to be creative. When all of those things are happening, you're in good shape. What happens under toxic stress? It's shut down. So is your memory. So is your ability, you feel paralyzed. Tara said it so beautifully, so elegantly. You're paralyzed. You're non-functional. Your prefrontal cortex is getting hammered right and left. So it's really imperative to reclaim it. You need to be able to get it back. You need to strengthen it. That's one of the reasons why I like TM myself, because I was promised a big brain. Now, raise your hand if you wouldn't want a bigger brain. Come on. Now, the rest of you are in deep denial. You want a big brain, right? So when you do something like transcendental meditation, we now have science. We have hardcore science with great tools, functional MRIs, PET scans, that allow us to be able to actually measure and see, visualize, observe, take pictures of what happens in the brain as you're going through transcendence. You turn on your prefrontal cortex, and the stress response itself, as you're looking through the limbic system, the amygdala, as you're looking at that entire hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, it's becoming quieter. As that becomes quiet, the prefrontal cortex is allowed to be able to optimally function. Who wouldn't like that? At the same time, when you're also leading a healthy lifestyle, doing this, exercising, for instance, etc., guess what you're doing? You're inducing the growth of more brain cells. It's called neurogenesis, or neuroplasticity in the brain. When that happens, you get a bigger brain. We've measured it. Big brain. We like it. So what's your reward out of this whole thing? Well, I think, again, Tara said it beautifully, and that is the whole issue of transcendence is centering to a core of peace, allowing yourself to be able to just take a moment and to be able to reorganize. Come on, you're on a hike, right? Don't you take a moment to rest? This never rests. And when you have PTSD and MST and all of these other forms of violence and trauma and toxic stress, there's no rest. You have to find the rest. And this is, by science, by far, the most optimal way to do this. I've already piloted this with a number of my patients in early studies. We're going to be doing work with food addiction as one form of addiction and transcendental meditation, and the results have been nothing less than extraordinary. So as we're looking at all of these different forms of stress across the board, there's something else I'm going to add, and it's a new form of science. And this wasn't actually in my abstract, so listen up and Google it hard, and this will be empowering to you, because I looked at that word behind me. It was empowerment. Listen, DNA is not your destiny. It's not. I could take your genes and I can change expression. I won't change the gene, but I will change its expression by every thought you take, every thought you have, the food you eat, and the physical activity that you do. This is extraordinary. It's called epigenetics. And the science of epigenetics has just emerged over the last 5 to 6 years or so, and something that we're studying and incorporating in our work in a big way. When you do something like transcendental meditation, what we're now going to be studying is actual gene expression. So whereas that gene may be leaving you wide open and vulnerable for depression, for anything that happened to you, either in utero or in your own environment, you have the power to change the genetic expression to your betterment. And it starts with your head and a healthy lifestyle. It's kind of what I call my 3 M's, mind, mouth, and muscle. Easy way to remember it. So just remember, you know, what Tara said was so important. What those children of those mothers who've experienced the trauma are now undergoing are changes. These are genetic expression changes. And you want those to be as positive, as empowering as possible. And that will only happen if you take the right actions, mind, mouth, and muscle. So as we seek the solutions to this toxic stress, especially as it applies to women, this panel is issuing a collective call to arms and minds. Thank you. I'd like to introduce the next speaker. Dr. Lois Lee is an internationally recognized expert on child sex trafficking, is the founder and president of Children of the Night. Since 1979, she has rescued over 10,000 American children from prostitution with over $40 million in private funds. Leaders come from around the world to observe her trailblazing work. Before we hear from Lois, I'd like you to watch this.
I was taken from Seattle by a pimp to another state, and I was forced to prostitute.
I was actually forced into trafficking.
Just that stress of being with somebody in a car like 6-7 times every single day with somebody you don't know anything about, doing something that you should not be doing. It's just like everything is rushing through your mind. A lot of times I shut off my mind when I was out there. I had to shut off my brain and I had to go into like a kind of like a robot mode.
I ended up getting pregnant when I was 13 and I ran away because the father was threatening to harm the child, and I haven't seen anybody in about 2 years. I've been on the run. Yeah, I do have flashbacks. I used to have them a lot. I mean, every day more than once a day. I learned TM, Transcendental Meditation, about 3 months ago.
The first time I did it, it was like the most calming experience I had ever had in my whole life. TM is something that helps you with your mind, your body, and your soul.
It re-energizes me throughout the day. It helps me focus in school. It's a stress reliever, I think, for almost all of us, including staff. The deep silence that we have when I do TM is something that I look forward to just about every day, because I don't get that throughout the day. I have thoughts constantly popping up from my past. It's not as common now that I have started TM, but they're still there. And when I am in meditation, I just have a deep silence that I can't replace. It makes me realize that that was my past. Like, this is my future, and it's worth my while. It's gonna be totally awesome.
Transcendental meditation has given our children a tool they didn't have before. Because of the abuse that they've incurred, they always react. They're never in control. It's always a reaction to whatever it is that's coming to them. Even if it's goodness, they may push it away. And that pause that they're able to stop, listen, think, and then act gives them the opportunity to take control over their lives.
I believe that I'm gonna be a writer, I'm gonna be a social worker, and I'm gonna help young people and people on the street.
Thank you so much. Child prostitution begins at home. Most children who become prostitutes in America were sexually abused at the hands of their first caregivers. They learn at a very early age how to disassociate their feelings from their bodies. They've had to learn how to manipulate, how to size up others, how to outsmart others they do not respect. This process creates a very specific challenge to social workers and traditional cognitive therapists. The child who suffered at the hands of vicious, vile pimps often demeans or pushes away the do-gooder because they don't believe there are any good people in the world. Providing a stable home, a loving environment, nurturing staff, and an education is only part of the job. We must teach our children that there are good people in the world who are willing to help them and that can be trusted. But they will act out time and time again to prove to the do-gooder that they are not worth saving. Through transcendental meditation, the initial process requires some cognitive process to where they realize the exploitation, they feel it, and they put it out to where it becomes outside of them rather than something that defines them. They start to experience a peacefulness, a goodness, and a childlike innocence. They start to radiate from within very much like a concentric circle, and they begin to shed those bad memories. And they're not required to relive the trauma again and again as required by traditional cognitive psychotherapy. When an abuser threatens a child or says mean things to the child's response is to run towards the abuser and to behave in a very predictable kind of way that is harmful to the child. Children who are victimized by prostitution are often required to work with law enforcement in the arrest and the prosecution of the pimp or trafficker. Frequently, they're required to call the pimp, and the phone call is tape recorded, and they're forced to face him down and to get him, most typically him or her, to say that they're going to use the child for prostitution, for sexual acts, for money, and take the money. This process can be very damaging to the child if it's not handled appropriately. In recent times, a young woman who was required to make a telephone call in the presence of law enforcement, and the call was tape recorded with the pimp, he said to her, "You're a hoe. You're a hope to die hoe. You're always going to be a hoe. Even your dad knew you were a hoe, and that's why he sexually abused you when you were 5. She looked at me, and I looked at her, and we smiled with each other's eyes. And she finished the phone call and got him to say the things that needed to be said for a successful arrest and a prosecution. And when she hung up the phone, she looked at me and she smiled and she said, "Poor thing." The regular practice of transcendental meditation twice a day for 15 minutes, the child begins to learn to pause, process, and no longer is vulnerable to the emotional manipulations of the abuser, the pimp, the manipulator, or the trafficker. The child begins to learn from their inner strength who is good and who is bad. And sometimes for the first time in their life, they learn to act rather than react in response to the harmful people. By reaching into the depths of their souls, they find love, happiness, and they attract more of the same. My success with boys and girls who've been victimized by prostitution has come from a set of skills that allowed me to share their reality. That process took a toll on me, as it does with other caring professionals, because oftentimes we feel isolated and detached in our attempts to protect ourselves from the intense feelings that we're confronted with on a day-by-day basis for many, many years. Through my 2 years of regular transcendental meditation practice, I had to learn, and I did learn, that there were good people in the world that would also help me rescue America's children from the ravages of prostitution right here in the United States. Transcendental meditation led me to abandon my restricted thinking that limited children of the night to children under the age of 18 and children who were willing to travel to Van Nuys, California, and live in the Children of the Night home. Through my daily routine meditations, I learned that I could take my 33 years of experience and expertise and teach drop-in centers, outreach programs, and other shelters throughout America how to do educational services to the lowest level person on the street, to make the opportunity of a general education degree available to anyone who was living on the streets, to link people who lived on the streets to premier mental health services by providing access to supplemental Social Security benefits that were designed for people who were psychotic and forced to live on the streets. Transcendental meditation has led me to an exciting and challenging, cost-effective solution to people and young people who are forced to live on the streets, and will leave a permanent and indelible mark on the standard of care for young people. For other caregivers who want to help the less fortunate, and many do, we must first heal ourselves and discover our inner strength and the peacefulness, which is where all of our creativity, love, and nurturing resides. We become so busy and so stressed in our efforts to help others, and we protect ourselves by shutting down our feelings. And we as caregivers should not be overlooked in the process of rescuing those who are less fortunate. God gave me the gift to reach into the hearts of children and to encourage them and help them change their futures. That gift was both a gift and a burden until Emily Lynch reached out and told me about the David Lynch Foundation. The David Lynch Foundation has taught me that children can be taught transcendental meditation and change their lives, that these children can be reached, children that most people believe are unreachable and unchangeable. And for that, I will always be grateful. Thank you. I would like to introduce Serena Grosswald. She's a George Washington University trained cognitive learning specialist and research investigator at the National Institutes of Health, funded by the Center for Natural Health and Prevention. She's a co-author in a series of trials studying the effects of transcendental meditation on bipolar disorders and on post-traumatic stress syndrome among veterans of Iraq and Afghanistan wars. In addition to publications in scholarly journals such as the featured in U.S. News and World Report, Business Week, Newsweek, International Herald Tribune, Barron's, and ABC News, and PBS. Please, I'm honored to introduce to you Serena Grosswald.
Thank you. I have to say that I'm honored to be among this panel of incredible women and to be here today to talk with you. PTSD, or post-traumatic stress, is far more prevalent than many of us realize. In recent years, it's gotten a lot of public attention because of our returning servicemen and women who have come back from the recent wars bearing the burdens of their experience in that war. But setting that aside, it's estimated that 8% of Americans experience post-traumatic stress sometime during their lives. At any given time in any year, as many as 5.2 million people are experiencing post-traumatic stress. And PTSD doesn't discriminate. It affects people of all ages, of all marital status, of all socioeconomic income, of all sexes. Children also, as you've heard, are very affected by stressful situations. It's estimated that 5 million children experience some extreme trauma in their lives. And among those, 30% experience the symptoms of post-traumatic stress. These numbers are staggering by themselves, but what's really distressing is that women experience post-traumatic stress at twice the level of men. 2 times greater prevalence among women than men. Yet we hear very little about that. Even all of the publicity about the returning veterans with PTSD is almost solely focused on men. There's very little attention to the fact that women experience traumatic stress to the degree to which they do. But that will not be the case for very much longer. Many of the women in this room are committed to ending the silence and raising awareness to the extent to which women are victims of trauma, whether it be physical or psychological trauma, trauma related to natural disasters or geopolitical situations, or the trauma from experiencing poverty and homelessness. It's time to recognize the problem and start focusing on solutions. No matter the cause of PTSD, it has very severe effects on the mind and body. It interferes with sleep, it interferes with the ability to concentrate, the ability to be organized, with memory, with anger control, all of which are basic to carrying out just the fundamental responsibilities of daily life. All these issues create challenges just in the day-to-day. But it also creates a feeling of hopelessness. And when there's hopelessness, it's very difficult to take advantage of even the simplest resources that are made available. But the Transcendental Meditation technique helps from the inside out. It gives a woman or a girl the internal foundation to take control of her life and to start to begin anew. The Transcendental Meditation technique allows the mind to settle down to that quiet reservoir of inner strength. That ability to transcend, to experience pure silence and peace, and to experience that deep state of rest creates a very profound effect on the mind and body. There have been many peer-reviewed research studies that have shown the effects of TM on symptoms related to post-traumatic stress, and its ability to improve depression, reduce the symptoms of PTSD, to improve the quality of life, on veterans, on college students, on children, adolescents, and among the general population. And I just want to take a minute or two and review some of those results. The first study related to post-traumatic stress was done in the 80s on Vietnam veterans. That study was a randomized controlled trial, and it showed that it improved not only over 50% improvement in the symptoms of post-traumatic stress, but there was a 54% reduction in depression, 45% reduction in anxiety, and a 40% reduction in emotional numbness. There are also very large improvements in sleep and huge reductions in self-medicating through alcohol. We also recently published a pilot study on returning veterans from the Iraq and Afghanistan wars, and again, we showed 50% reduction in post-traumatic stress symptoms in just 8 weeks, and a 23% improvement in quality of life. And we've informally followed up with some of those veterans, and what we've found is now, over 2.5 years, these veterans are still meditating and have little or no symptoms of post-traumatic stress. There is nothing that has been shown that kind of response. I also have done studies with children who are experiencing high stress and psychological disorders. We've seen in those studies, again, 50% decrease in anxiety problems, in depression and anxiousness symptoms in just 3 months. So the TM can have a very, very profound effect, as you've heard, on the lives of people who are suffering from trauma and the consequences of that. But the U.S. is not the only place where women and girls experience trauma. There are other parts of the world where the populations are subject to trauma every day. In Africa, tens of millions have been victims of violence or have witnessed horrors of war. And often it's targeted at women and children. In 2011, the African PTSD Relief Project was founded to address this epidemic crisis. They work in collaboration with the David Lynch Foundation, and they are partnering with other top humanitarian organizations. And before I tell you a little bit more about the results they've seen there, I'd like for you to take a minute and watch this video.
I entered Uganda from Sudan. I was married to a Sudanese. After his death, my in-laws turned against me. Then I managed to escape through neighbors. They managed to tell me to come to Uganda. So I passed through a lot. I think too much. I think too much. My sleep is not okay. I sleep little and I get myself awake. But my mind all the time thinking too much, a lot in my mind. I have a lot in my mind.
Zaki vers 19h, bakoteli biso na ba militaire na ndako. Bon, nga zaki déjà na tikali na chambre ba bimisi mobali na toza soda on a moni 6. Evenema ezali koleka na salon na mobali na ngana yebaki te. Na 6 wana nakokaki ko supporter te na perdre connaissance. Après wana nde ekokima siko ba ekokimisa ngola yobiki. Situation eza so malamu te tobima po ba ya kosilisa biso nyonso. Ndike ekokima le 30 juin na butu zamba. Là, c'est méditation. On t'a laissé avec un petit frère. On a dit que vraiment, on doit dire que ça m'a ramonté. On a dit que en tout cas, depuis que on a un problème depuis 2008, on a eu en 2011. On a eu que vraiment.
When you close your eyes, the memories you had, you feel it, it is just there, close to you. But when you start meditating, it's like somehow something is going off you. And you feel you are relaxing. Your mind, your body relaxes. Yeah? You feel you're outside world. You are just in your peaceful world.
Nazalaki bien, nazolata malamu, nazolia malamu, mobali nanga somi mutuka ezotambusa ngai nazalaki bien ntango nakomi mbala moko na biloko wana nyonso naza nango te donc ezalaki mpasi makasi mpo namesa na boye ezalaki ngai te méditation nde esungi ngai.
No negativity, no, it doesn't come near me now. Because if I had that negative, by this time I would have already told you, all tears coming. These tears, we don't force it. Because of your heart inside, the mind is stressed, then you get tears are just coming. Can't control. But now when the mind is fresh, you see, even if you want me to cry now, I can't. I can't. It is not there in me.
nasepelaki mingi mpona na klase ya teknike esungi ngai esalisi ngai vraiment namoni ke nakoma ata soki likambo ezali nayoki kaka nasali nakoti na kati na méditation nayoki mbamo motema na nga ekiti na se nakomi koyoka bien nazali kolala te 24/24 nalalaka te.
While I sleep, those days you could remember I could cry, tell you this. I wake up midnight remembering how I was raped, how I was hit badly, my arm, my breast burnt. But now I feel like it was in somebody's body, not me. Me, I'm free. I'm a free woman. Free, I'm very free.
napesi merci mpona na David mpo nde bafutelaki nga mbongo ya kolanda klase oyo ya teknike oyo esungi ngai vraiment apende esungi nga mingi.
It's so moving to see the difference Transcendental meditation has made in the lives of some of these people and how it really is changing their future. But it's important for us to be able to show the science also that it works. And so for that study in Uganda with Congolese refugees, they're doing a randomized controlled trial. They've actually finished the first phase of it, and they have it submitted for publication, so they've limited what I can say about it. But I will say that they did a matched control study with 50 Congolese refugees, and they did standard measurements of post-traumatic stress. And after a 4-month period, they saw rapid and highly significant reductions in stress with no change in the non-meditating group. So now it's my honor to introduce the next speaker, Rita Cosby. Rita is a renowned Emmy-winning TV host, veteran correspondent, and best-selling author who's anchored highly rated primetime shows on Fox News and MSNBC. She's currently a special correspondent for the top-rated CBS syndicated news magazine Inside Edition and hosts WOR's nationally syndicated radio program, The Rita Cosby Show. So Rita, thank you. There you are.
Hello, everybody. Hi, I'm going to be moderating later, so I'm going to keep this brief. Before I get started, how courageous and amazing are these women with us today? I'm really honored to be here, and I also want to thank Joanna Plafsky. I also want to thank Ed Schloman, Lorraine Cancro, also Robert Cancro. They're with ICAMI's Global Stress Initiative because they're the ones who inspired me to learn about TM. So I'm so grateful that all of you are here today. And you were talking about, Pamela, how we always go 180 miles an hour. I go 190 miles an hour. So I can relate to very much what you were saying and also Soledad was saying. And my life is so crazy. And I remember when I was introduced to TM, I went to a David Lynch event, sort of similar to what you guys are here. It was a gala event. And I remember when I went, I thought, oh, this will be interesting. I'm always curious as a journalist to sort of learn more and, explore different things. And I was blown away. I mean, look at the video that we just saw of this woman in Uganda and seeing the transformation and seeing the lives of women and men that have been affected by TM, it was staggering to me. And I was so overwhelmed. And I thought I would just kind of go and just watch as an observer. And I've always been a bit of a skeptic just on things in general. That's our nature as journalists. We're always the ones asking the crazy, tough questions. And when I went, I was just so profoundly moved and so impressed and so in awe to see people who have been affected, like this woman in Uganda, like veterans who have gone and seen the toughest battles, and to see them changed in their life forever. And to do something that's not pharmacological, to do something that everybody at home can do, something that's practical, something that's affordable, something that's easy to do. And I thought, wow, what an amazing thing. And to see that kind of peace, that some of those folks who have gone through some of the most severe situations, like the women that you have saved, and I thought if it can help them, it can help even crazy Rita Cosby. And it has. It has been one of the most beautiful experiences in my life. And for someone who has a crazy schedule like Pam and everybody else here in this room, Bobby said one of the most beautiful things to me, and I thought it was so great. You said, I know how crazy you are. You spend all your time covering everybody else. Find 15 or 20 minutes in the morning and afternoon for yourself. And I thought, how am I going to do this? I have to figure it in between breathing, as Pamela said. But I found it. And it has been one of the most amazing, most joyous moments in my life. And I hope for those of you in the room who have not experienced it here today will explore it for yourselves, because it has been an incredible transformation. I also want to just talk a little bit about post-traumatic stress, some of the things that Serena so beautifully talked about. Post-traumatic stress, just to give you an example of some of the staggering numbers that are out there. 500,000 men and women from Iraq and Afghanistan alone will have some form of PTSD. Think about that. I mean, that is a huge number. And as you talked about, it's something that we all have to care about as society. The effects that post-traumatic stress is having, whether it's someone who was raped, whether it is someone who has gone through military sexual trauma of some form, all these different degrees, it is something that we all have to care about as a society, because there's a dramatic trickling effect. And also an important effect for those who are taking care of those, like yourself. I thought it was so beautiful when you said, Lois, that the focus needs to be also making sure that the caregiver is taken care of, because so often the caregiver is forgotten. I know firsthand the effects that mental trauma can have on a family. Tara talked about the children. What many of you may not know in the room is I was that child. One Christmas, when I was a teenager, my own father just suddenly, abruptly left the family. I heard my parents arguing in the other room. My father said, I'm leaving. And I thought he was leaving work. It turned out he was leaving us. My father, like you, was a marathon runner. My father ran 33 marathons in his day. But my father was running away from something, running away from his own personal demons. I did not know my father until just a few years ago. I learned just a few years ago when I made a discovery in my mother's belongings. I found an old rusty POW tag, and I found a red and white bloody fighting Polish armband and a card with a code name on it, and a card of an ex-POW named Ryszard Kozabutsky. And I realized at that moment, my father had been a prisoner of war. And what I learned was my father went through some pretty extraordinary things as a teenage fighter, think about it, against the Nazis, and talks about one night how he was surrounded by gunfire, had to escape through the sewers, literally crawl through the sewers. He was later recaptured, and then he was taken to a POW camp. And my father, at 90 pounds and 6 feet tall, escaped from that POW camp, ultimately to be saved by U.S. troops. Absolutely. I'll applaud our U.S. troops any day of the week. How could experiencing something like that not affect the way that you would act towards your children. You talked about your son. How could it not affect your personal relationships? And I always thought, what happened to this man? How could he be so emotionally void, a zombie, numb like you talked about so beautifully, Tara, and so courageously? But when you think about it, how could he even go on and function? And I think it's so incredible. Those who have gone through incredible trauma, like my father, and think about being a Nazi prisoner of war as a teenager, tortured, escaped, all the, just the most horrible things you can imagine. How could that not affect the next generation? My father was not able to relate to his own family for decades, and it left for me, as the next generation, a lot of anger, a lot of frustration, a lot of confusion. And I have found, not only my father, thank goodness, in the last few years, but also through the joy of transcendental meditation, a wonderful inner peace and a wonderful joy. And something that I've also experienced is talking to other caregivers. Because as you so beautifully said, it is so important to remember that there are so many people who are taking care of those, the next generation, and those who are experiencing some of the most severe cases. As a journalist, I sadly see people when either they're dead or they're near death. You've either done something really great if you see me at your door or something really bad. I tell everybody it's sort of, oh no, Rita's here, something happened. But unfortunately, we see some of the beautiful things in life, but we also get to see the very worst. And so I feel that this is one of the most amazing, think about affordable ways to make such an incredible, dramatic difference in people's lives. And those especially who are caregivers, there's some staggering statistics. I did a lot of research recently. 66% of the caregivers out there are women. This is something that women, I think we talked about by nature and some of the physiology and some of the medical research, but also we have that caregiving nature. So it's something that I think is so important. And post-traumatic stress affects women much more than men, as we talked about also from the caregiver perspective. There were some staggering numbers, 35% to 25% of the way that caregivers are affected by post-traumatic stress, the rub-off, by women. So it's something that I think we, as a nature of wanting to give and wanting to care and wanting to make a difference, we are also dramatically affected. And again, the children of the next generation. I don't want to repeat the numbers you said so beautifully, the effects that TM have had. 50% improvement, as Serena said. Think about it, among veterans and among people who have gone through some of the most horrific things, the people that you have seen firsthand and you've seen certainly in Africa too. And also the effects of people like my father. I wish in my own life that my father and I would have known TM many years ago. My father did not share what he went through for 65 years. Not just with his daughter, not just with my brother, but with his own wife, who he was married to for 32 years. I believe if TM had come into my life, he could have had an inner peace to free him from the demons of war, and I could have found my father that much sooner. Today, my dad is finally home, and thanks to TM, I can look at this journey that I have been on, a very personal, very deeply personal journey, and a very bumpy one, but be able to share it with other people. And hope that all of you learn today that there is a solution within yourselves. There's an incredible inner peace and an incredible courage that we all have within ourselves. We just have to find it, and TM is a wonderful way to do so. I want to thank all of you, and I also want to make sure I introduce our last panelist, and then I think we're going to take a little bit of a break too, but we have an incredible last panelist that we have here today. I want to bring up Miss Joni Steele-Kimberlin. She's a documentary producer. By the way, some of you saw there's some DVDs floating around too. That is her DVD. I encourage you guys to get it. She is with Third Fire Films. She's also a founding and dedicated member of the David Lynch Foundation Board of Directors. She has been involved in TM, has an incredible personal story of herself. Even though she says she is only 40 years old, she has practiced TM for 38 years. I can't believe this. And she is also a mother of 3. please give a huge round of applause to Joni Steele Kimberlin. Thank you, everybody.
Okay, so I'm the last. Do you think they gave me some tough acts to follow? I mean, really. So I'll be short and sweet because I'm on the last, so, wake up. It's just a few more minutes. And I'm really very happy to be here with you today. It's so great to be in this room that's just filled with wonderful women and men, too. So I wanted to share with you some things that I learned in the process of making a film about wise women, and it's called Get Real, Wise Women Speak. But after listening to Dr. Pamela Peeke and the amazing and courageous Tara, I think I'm changing the name to Get Real, Wise Warrior Women Rock. So I've been practicing TM for almost 40 years. And if Dr. Pamela Peeke is right, I should have a big damn brain. I don't know, that prefrontal cortex should be awesome. But I think that one thing that comes with connecting with your inner self on a daily basis is that you begin to become more authentic and to value authenticity more. And so what happened in my life is I began growing in authenticity and appreciating it more and more. I also became more and more disgusted with the way the popular media portrays women and girls of any age, at any stage, especially in these so-called reality shows. And they're not real. And it's certainly not authentic. So what I did is that I went in search of more authentic role models, and specifically in search of modern-day wise women. After all, mythology and ancient literature of almost every culture across the board represents wisdom as feminine. No surprise there, right? Sorry, Bobby. So there's 18 wise women in my film, including Marianne Williamson, Jane Fonda, Della Reese, Nobel Prize winner Jody Williams, the poet Nikki Giovanni, the editor Susan L. Taylor, the Council of 13 Indigenous Grandmothers, and many more. And from them, I learned that motivation shifts in life when ambition is replaced by meaning, and an inner fire is sparked, and it propels individuals to use their time, their experience, and their wisdom to make a difference in the world, to improve the world. So we call this burning desire to infuse action with meaning the third fire. As cultural anthropologist Angeles Aryan told us, it has to have fire, or I won't do it. It has to have fire. So what has fire for these wise women in my film? It's generally helping others, and in many cases, it's helping women and girls. Jane Fonda's passion is working with adolescent girls. Susan Taylor told me that she's on fire to help adolescents, and she started a foundation to mentor young people. Swanee Hunt works to improve the lives of women in violent conditions all over the world. Jody Williams won a Nobel Peace Prize for her work against landmines. And Tenzin Palmo is a Buddhist nun who created a nunnery in the foothills of the Himalayas for young girls and women who escape on foot through the mountains of Tibet to reach it. Some of the women in the film who are really especially dear to me are from the Council of the 13 Indigenous Grandmothers. And these are women who use their tribal knowledge, their authentic tribal knowledge, and they travel the world with it to bring peace and healing. And one of the women we interviewed was Flora de Mayo, who is of Mayan descent. And Flora de Mayo told us that women are the keepers of the knowledge of the feminine. And I just love that. I mean, women are the keepers of the knowledge of the feminine. She says that our culture is very family and community oriented. Our young girls are not left alone. They're being taken care of. And she says it's the role of all women to be advisors to younger women and to girls. So how do we help the vulnerable girls and the young women that are needy among us? How do we bring them healing and empower them? One of the standout takeaways from my film is the importance that almost all the women place on creating sacred space in their lives, for every day to have that time for sacred space. Della Reese, who's quite a character, and she's now an ordained minister, she told us, she said, "My favorite quote is, 'Be still and know that I am God.'" And Della goes on to say, in her own Della way, "That's more than just a sentence. Stop running around like a chicken with its head cut off and know that you know what you know." You've got to love Della, right? We also interviewed one of the Indigenous grandmothers, Agnes, who's a Native American elder, and Agnes advises, to be a woman of wisdom, you need to incorporate spirit world, and you need to listen to spirit world. So the wise women in my film take daily time to commune with their inner selves, to release stress and to become more effective. And so it's no surprise that many of these women, including some of the Indigenous grandmothers, practice transcendental meditation, which, as you've heard over and over, has been scientifically verified in hundreds of studies in prestigious journals to effectively release stress and to create inner happiness. It's an incredibly effective technique. And it's also a great way to be still and to know that you know what you know. So one of the things that I'm on fire for personally is to help our most vulnerable young people by bringing TM to them. And that's why I'm on the board of the David Lynch Foundation, and that's why I personally love to support Lois Lee in her work with Children of the Night. One of my own cherished memories is when I got the opportunity about a year ago in LA to meditate with some of the Children of the Night kids. And you know what I learned is that they're no different than my own children in their hopes and dreams for the future. And in fact, one of my daughters, Chloe, is here, and it's her dream to be a writer and a teacher, and it's very similar to what the young woman that we heard in the video that Lois brought us said. So I'm so deeply happy that TM is going to help those children, many of them, to reach their dreams. So we're reaching the end here. I'd like to close with a quote from the film by Angeles Arian. Angeles said that the elder's greatest responsibility is to re-enchant the world, to bring magic, possibility, and great love into children's lives, and to assure them that they can do anything. It's a part of mentoring the next generation and planting seeds so that they become our future. So I personally don't know of a better way to ensure the future of our girls and young women and to re-enchant the world than to give them the gift of transcendental meditation. Thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
So we have an opportunity here for Miss Rita Cosby to host this Q&A, and I have a few questions that I'm going to start with from the audience, and then we'll take it from there. I have a question one question that came in for Lois Lee. Did you find it difficult when you're bringing meditation to children, young teenagers? How did they respond? Were they open? Were they receptive? Did you have to twist arms?
Well, we had an amazing teacher named Pookie Freeberg, who I did not know, but David Lynch had brought her from a place called Fairfield, Iowa, that I never knew existed, that she quotes me as saying, "This place reeks of safety," when she took me there to visit. And Pookie was in a room with a young lady who's featured in the film, Annie, and I didn't know it, that Pookie came from such a protected environment, and she was only 23 years old. I didn't know that until I completed my second retreat with the San Francisco School District, and I told Pookie my whole life, and we were driving back. She was driving me to the airport, and I said, "How old are you?" And she said, 23. I said, "Oh my God, you know everything about me. You're my leader." So she was a really amazing person who was able to sit down and disarm these children. I didn't do it. She did it. And it was important, I think, as the David Lynch Foundation says, that the caregivers are part of it and that they're trained first. But she led it. A 23-year-old David Lynch Foundation Transcendental Meditation teacher led it with ease. And just one other thing, I can tell you that it was so easy. She moved so effortlessly through the organization. That may not be her interpretation, that we play softball every Sunday. And at one point I was playing softball with the kids, and I turned to throw the ball to second base, and there was Pookie who caught it. So it was not hard, but she may have a different stray.
Thank you. One more question for Pamela. I know Pamela Schiffman has to go to India. Just your comments on what you heard today, from what you heard. If you could take Joni, hand the mic.
Yeah. You know what? I speak very loudly. I don't need a mic. Yeah, no, just to say it was so interesting to learn about, and really, I learned a huge amount. It was really fascinating and gave me a lot to think about. So thank you very much. Yeah, thank you for having me as well. And sorry that I need to leave early.
Safe travels. Thank you for joining us. Rita, do you have a question?
Can you guys hear me? We're going to open it up to the audience too. But I guess I just want to first of all give another round of applause to Tara Wise for sharing your story. How amazing was she? And I want to ask you too, Tara, because I'm sure a lot of folks know, how long did it take for TM to really change your life? It was amazing. You were sort of saying in the video almost immediately. And were you surprised? And let me give you, perfect.
It was very immediate, probably the very next day. There's a burst of energy, like automatically. It just consumed me. It's very powerful. I recall it. TM is so hard to explain when people always ask questions about it. Only thing I can say is you have to try it for yourself. But it's very powerful and overwhelming. It was able to help me recognize how I had been really out of myself for probably years since I got out, in 98, 99. So it's just it's a very powerful feeling, this burst of energy. I just felt like a different person automatically.
And did your son say, hey, what happened to mom?
I think everybody said what happened to Tara. My son noticed immediately, all my friends, my doctors even noticed immediately that there was something different. I lost about 50 pounds. That's one of the things that people don't know, is that I've lost 50 pounds since I started meditating.
Wow.
Yep, I lost 50 pounds.
Let's open it up to the audience. If you can maybe say your name, just stand up if you can
Oh,
say your
sure.
name, please.
I'm Henrietta Fishman, recently retired from the VA, but developed in New York and New Jersey most of the residential treatment programs for military sexual trauma and PTSD. So my question, or really my comment, is that you have made the most compelling presentations. The vignettes and the statistics are just mind-boggling, and my colleague and I certainly want to look into TM. But would you clarify, are you suggesting in any way TM instead of some of the treatment that is available, or in addition to, and how you see this continuum? And furthermore, one caveat, we are very aware that because we now have so many women in the military, there are questions about the traditional treatment for PTSD because the research was done with men. So we know there are a lot of gaps, but I'm wondering what your thinking is about this.
Let's go to Pamela Peak on that. Great questions.
And then Serena.
Serena next.
I think it's an absolutely fabulous question. The VA now has a brand new wellness program. It's actually being run by a good friend and colleague of mine, Tracy Gaudet. And we now have the attention of the upper level VA executives and physicians as we're looking at incorporating something like this into an integrative program. So it's not an either-or situation. This is integrative. So each individual person, man and woman, who is facing this issue of PTSD is going to be looked at as a unique individual and have a customized program that may involve everything from traditional medicine to complementary medicine to certainly right now what we're trying to instill is the philosophy that the using of the mind is core to this, absolutely core. In traditional medical training, we were never taught that. This was a blow-off. It was like, well, let's just get right with the pills and let's, move it along here. But now we're beginning to understand, certainly since we have new technology and medical tools to be able to understand how the mind works, that this is absolutely center and front and center now. We now are going to be allocating more resources to be able to not only study this, as I told you from the NIH level, but also to be able to beta test this, to pilot this, as Serena has done so beautifully in her own work. So again, not an either or. We're finally bringing it to the table. It's now getting that level of stature. Transcendental meditation has just simply had that much more research. I'm a researcher, I'm a scientist and a physician, so I honor and respect, excellent science, the kind of things that Serena has done as well as other colleagues and what we're going to be doing at the University of Maryland. We need more of that. So clearly we're going to be prioritizing more of that. At the same time, really pilot testing more of the meditative methodology, especially TM. Why? Because we know how it works so much better than the others. Go ahead, Trina.
Is this on? Yeah. It's on. Okay. To address it a little more directly to the VA, as you know very well, the symptoms of post-traumatic stress run the gamut in terms of a continuum and also the length of time. The VA is dealing with veterans from all wars, from World War II to this current war. And so the level of stress, the degree to which people have managed it themselves, coped with themselves, and self-medicated, it affects where they are today. And so for some, it's adjunct, absolutely. For others, if their intervention is soon enough, it could be all they need. And for some, it is a stepping stone to be able to come off of a long history of medication. So it really depends. And then ultimately to take it outside the VA to the category of resilience and to move it into the military so that after multiple deployments, that the person going to serve has that resilience already, has that built-in buffer to the experiences that they're having so that we're not after the fact trying to treat tens of thousands of people who have not had an ability from internal strength to cope with what they're seeing. I will also mention that there are studies that are going to get underway. I think you may or may not have seen that the VA, particularly the Deputy Secretary of the VA, has indicated that they have an interest in looking at meditation of all types to see how it can help.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for all of your wonderful commentary on the subject. My name is Christina, and I come from an industry that barters in sex, maybe not as glamorously as you may think, modeling. And I can tell you there's nothing glamorous about being raped. In my experience, which I've dealt with by kind of writing through it and creating a fiction story that I think is very explosive to that industry specifically, but also just to how women grow up and how perilous that is for all of us. My question really, because I've tried transcendental meditation before, is there a difference to how you're supposed to do it to make it therapeutic? Or, because I feel like I'm doing it wrong.
That's a great question. Serena, you want to take that?
If you have learned transcendental meditation, if you're sure that that's the technique that you learned, then what you do is just connect with the nearest teacher, and they have a process to refresh your technique and make sure you're doing it correctly. And in that case, there is no difference in the way that it's used therapeutically or for the general population. The technique is just that powerful for everyone.
And if I can learn it, anyone can learn it.
Hey, those are my words.
Those are Pamela's words, too.
I used to be like Pam T.
Hi, my name is Rosalie Sapla, and I just recently came back from Brazil because just through a friend of mine, I thought it was important to look at what's happening in Brazil. And I'm trying to connect like sports NGOs and sports with kids to help them get off the street. And obviously it's a culture where I don't really know all about the culture, so I went down there. But I think it's probably a tough one for girls. I'm working with two organizations. One's called Fight for Peace, Luta pela Paz, and one of their primary people are, I think it's going to buzz if I'm over here, one of the primary people there that they put in the front in the videos is a young woman boxing. And Favela Surf Club also has like a group of girls there that part of it. The reason I bring that up is because personally, you know, there were certain things that happened that scared me quite a bit. And I, you know, just put my energies towards sports. And I think, though, one of the reasons I've kind of went away from meditation is that I felt I needed to protect myself. And then so probably what you're thinking, so like a lot of it now is I'm trying to get back to what you said about being feminine, which obviously I can do on the external. But I think cultivating vulnerability is something that some of my friends that, you know, just walking around are doing that. And we do like boxing, I do martial arts, I know 3 styles, I love it, and that's how I've been doing it. But what I found is that I'm fighting all the time, and I'd like this peace. So before I go down to Brazil and spread like all of this, I just thought maybe there's like a missing piece that this could bring to these sports organizations that I'm going to help in Brazil.
Pamela Peaks shaking her head. Go ahead.
I'm the national spokesperson for the American College of Sports Medicine's Exercise is Medicine global campaign. And just to tell you 2 things, you medicate with movement and you medicate with meditation. What's very interesting about this is they're intertwined, and the science is very straightforward. When I was being a bit, you know, kind of cute up here saying big brain and all the rest of it, that's just so you remember everything. The same thing happens with physical activity. There's a reason why there's walking meditations in yoga. There's a long history of this, but now we know the science. And this, not that you always have to know the science for everything, but what ends up happening is when you do physical activity, you actually induce neurogenesis. Neurogenesis is the making of new neurons in the brain, for instance. You obviously make new cells all over your body when you do that, but we never knew about the brain until about 10 years ago or so, after some beautiful work done at the Salk Institute. And so what ends up happening is if you're doing transcendental meditation and you're also at the same time engaging in something wonderful and joyful like physical activity, whether it's real sports or not, you're actually getting a win-win. That's one of the reasons why you feel so much better. So when you combine the both, you have the magic recipe. And obviously if you're eating healthfully, then you've got a complete picture. Well done.
I just want to get Joni to add, because you've been doing TM for 38 years. Do you want to add to that?
Well,
you're the veteran of the group.
Well, I have to say I have crazy lives like the rest of you because I work and I'm a mother of 3 and I'm on foundations and boards and my kids, for instance, they'll say, "My God, have you meditated? You know, like, did you meditate before dinner? Go meditate." So I would have to say is that what happens with meditation is that you do it before anything, and everything that you do is better. So you do it before you do your martial arts or, you know, your soccer or whatever it is that you do in life. Whether you're a scientist or a mother or a filmmaker or you're spreading, you know, empowerment with sports to children in Brazil, meditate first, and then everything after that is actually better. And meditation increases mind-body coordination. It's just one of the benefits. So I'd say it's a great platform for anything that you'd like to achieve, especially with sports.
And unfortunately, everybody, we're wrapping up. We're a little tight on time because we wanted to make sure we heard from our great speakers. But also, please remember afterwards, if you have any questions for our speakers, I'm sure they'd be happy to stick around, right, ladies? Yes. So if you have any questions for any of these extraordinary women, make sure, don't you love, I just capture them here on camera. They have to say yes, right? They have no choice. But anyway, all of you, please, if you have any questions for these extraordinary women, please come up afterwards. And also, before I bring up Bobby, all of you may have noticed, do you see the blue card that's on your chairs, everyone? Please take a look at this. As you have heard from these women who have been there, and we've seen from the science and the incredible research and the devotion that these women have done, the problem is so real. The numbers that we're seeing, I mean, you think about 2,000 women in New York City trafficked, military assault, you think about all the numbers. It's incredible. It is staggering. And the need is great, and much of it is in our own communities. Obviously, we're seeing, images from thousands of miles away, but these are also in our own backyard. And the need is extraordinary. So anything any of you can do to help this incredible organization that on so many levels are helping extraordinary women, but also helping men. So you guys can do your part too, okay? But anything you can do to find out information. There's a lot of folks from David Lynch. You've had the pleasure. Bobby Roth is going to come up in a few moments. But there are a lot of representatives here in the room. Can all of you guys who are with David Lynch, can you raise your hands? Yeah. See, there's a lot of great hands out here, everybody. So if you have any questions or have someone who really needs TM, or you yourself have TM, maybe you haven't gone through some of the extreme cases that you've heard here. There are a lot of people in there, I have not gone through it, but obviously my father went through a lot and I went through it. All of us go through it in some level. It can help you in incredible, deeply profound ways. And as we're hearing also with the Veterans Administration, these folks who have gone through so much are seeing incredible transformations. There's scientific proof. There's living proof in this room. And I want to thank all of you. It's been a real privilege being here today and talking about something I love so much. And before we close, I want to bring up the wonderful Mr. Bobby Roth with the David Lynch Foundation. How about another big round for the other ladies, you guys?
There was an article in Forbes magazine about a month ago that said stress is the bubonic plague, the black plague of the 21st century. And the interesting thing, I'm going to tell you a little quick story and then everybody can leave, but we had a fundraising event at Radio City Music Hall 3 years ago. With Paul McCartney and Ringo Starr performed for the David Lynch Foundation. A lot of the money we raised at that went to help some of these programs. And the woman who was helping us put on the event at Radio City sent out invitations to her friends in the philanthropic community in New York. Meditation for kids. And this woman got the most furious letters written back saying, how can Paul McCartney do this? There's a limited amount of money in New York. My daughter has autism. My father has Alzheimer's. You're using money for something as frivolous as meditation? And what this woman told us is she said, people give to survival causes. And there was two missing links there. The lack of realization that stress is killing us. It's not just, oh, he's stressed. It's not just, oh, she's upset. It's killing us. And when you hit traumatic stress, and the other thing that had to be overcome is the idea that transcendental meditation was just, I can say this from, grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area, is some woo-woo California thing. Transcendental meditation is a medically sound, scientifically proven, very significant experience and process. And what we're faced with today when we see the problems of traumatic stress and that nothing is addressing that problem. Not talk therapy on its own, not drug therapy on its own. We need everything. But when you can offer something like this and empower a girl, a woman, a boy, a man with the tools to heal and empower themselves from within, on their own, in their own homes, not having to go and get the pills all the time, not having to go and join a group, which we support, but a daily tool. When I sit and listen to this, and the people talking, I just think, I'm just being very candid. I think, oh my God, it's not enough that we have 50 girls or 100 girls, or you think of Africa. I have to do something. We have to do something so we can pay the teachers of transcendental meditation to really empower everyone. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. Thank all the panelists for what you're doing. There's women, there's men, there's the human family. There's a beautiful ancient Vedic statement which says, Vasudev Kutumbakam, the world is my family. All together we can do something great. So thank you very much for coming.